Some players lose their careers not to injury or age, but to their own actions.
There's gonna be one f***ing phone call and you'll never see your f***ing family. How scary is that?
Whether it's violence, scandal, or disgraceful behavior, they become off limits, quietly pushed out of the league with no announcement, no second chances, and no way back in. This is the story of NHL outcasts, players who crossed the line so severe that their talent no longer mattered. From a racial slur to a violent hit to a criminal act, these are the Blackballed players of the National Hockey League. Alex Galchenyuk was a highly touted talent, drafted 3rd overall by the Montreal Canadiens in 2012. In his early 20s, he was a rising star, even scoring 30 goals one season in Montreal. But inconsistency and team changes saw his star fade. By 2023, he was struggling to find a role, and had bounced between 7 different NHL teams. In July 2023, Galchenyuk attempted to restart his career with the Arizona Coyotes. However, just days later, everything changed. Late one night in Scottsdale, Arizona, Galchenyuk allegedly crashed his car into a street sign and was found intoxicated and erratic by police. What followed was a shocking outburst. Galchenyuk threatened the officers, boasting about connections in Moscow and vowing to have them and their families killed.
There's gonna be one f***ing phone call and you'll never see your family. How scary is that? Fuck, one phone call and you're dead. Your whole bloodline is dead. How nuts is that? How nuts is that?
He also threw racial slurs at a black officer on the scene.
Turn right. Yeah, turn right, please. Yeah, turn right. Turn right. Yeah, you know the Russians will make on this out of you. Turn right, folks.
Don't call me.
Turn right. Yeah, I'll call you next. Turn right.
The entire incident was captured on police body cam and was deeply disturbing. Galchenyuk was arrested and charged with multiple misdemeanors, including hit and run, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, and making threats. The public relations damage was immediate. The Coyotes, who had just signed him, condemned the behavior and placed him on unconditional waivers within a day, moving to terminate his contract for material breach. On July 13th, 2023, only 12 days later after signing him, Arizona officially cut ties. No other NHL team would touch Galchenyuk after this ugly incident. He issued an apology to the officers for his deeply disrespectful behavior and entered the NHL's assistance program. But the damage was done. His NHL career was effectively over overnight. By August 2023, he went overseas to Russia, signing in the KHL, where he remains till this day. A former top draft pick with 13 NHL seasons under his belt found himself exiled from the league by just one incident. However, not every case was so abrupt. Some players eroded their standing over time, slowly burning every bridge until no team wanted them. That was the story of Tony DAngelo, a defenseman whose talent was never in question, but whose patterns of clashes, controversies, and off-ice outbursts made him one of the most polarizing figures in modern NHL. Throughout his career, DAngelo's on-ice and off-ice behavior repeatedly burned bridges. The trouble began in junior hockey, as a teenager in OHL. DAngelo was twice suspended for violating the league's harassment and diversity policy by using slurs and abusing officials, and this pattern of hot-headed offensive behavior followed him to the NHL. Drafted by Tampa Bay, DAngelo later flourished with the New York Rangers as a high-scoring defenseman, until his temper led to an infamous incident. On January 30th, 2021, after a tough loss, DAngelo got into a physical altercation with his own goalie, Alexander Gorgiev, in the tunnel. Sparked by DAngelo's angry remark, "Make a effing save," Gorgiev retaliated, reportedly even attempting a headbutt, and DAngelo hit him in the helmet with his stick. The skirmish was quickly broken up, but for the Rangers, it was a final straw. The very next day, management told DAngelo to stay away and placed him on waivers, effectively kicking him off the team. Rangers GM Jeff Gorton had warned DAngelo that there would be no more second chances, and he followed through. DAngelo had played his last game for New York, with no other team claiming him. The Rangers bought out his contract despite his 33-point season the year before, and at 25 years old, Tony DAngelo's NHL future was suddenly in doubt, not because of a lack of ability, but his reputation being toxic. After months-long exile, DAngelo got a lifeline in 2021 from the Carolina Hurricanes, who cautiously signed him to a one-year deal amid public backlash. Management defended the move, saying they did their research and that DAngelo recognized he had made mistakes and needed to mature. DAngelo rewarded Carolina's faith with a strong season on the ice and mostly drama-free behavior, yet the cloud of controversy still hung over him. See, DAngelo was very outspoken on social media. Not to get political in this video, but he was an outspoken supporter of Donald Trump and publicly questioned COVID-19's seriousness, which alienated a lot of fans. Some NHL owners explicitly refused to consider signing him, now wanting to face the backlash from fans and sponsors. DAngelo himself admitted that several teams showed interest, but their ownership didn't want to deal with him. In effect, he was semi-blackballed from the league. Only a limited few teams were willing to take a chance on him. By 2022 to 23, DAngelo was with his hometown Philadelphia Flyers, but even that turned rocky. Coach John Tortorella, himself a no-nonsense personality, trashed DAngelo several times and benching him for the final 5 games of the season, citing team reasons amid of clashing personalities. In July 2023, the Flyers decided to cut ties with him as well, buying out DAngelo's contract after a failed attempt to trade him back to Carolina. Once again, he was a free agent with a chalked reputation. DAngelo managed to re-sign with Carolina on a cheap 1-year contract for the 2023 to 24 season, but his second stint there was underwhelming. And by the end of the summer, the 28-year-old found himself unsigned and unwanted by the NHL. He went on to the KHL and later actually got another lifeline by the New York Islanders, where he still plays to this day. From junior hockey slurs to a fight with his own teammate, DAngelo continuously wrote himself into the league's bad books. While he still is playing in the NHL, he has earned a negative reputation, and a lot of teams do not want to sign him under no circumstances, effectively semi-blackballing him from the league. However, DAngelo got a chance and is still playing in the National Hockey League. However, Mitchell Miller was never given a first chance to begin with. Mitchell Miller's case shows that sometimes a player can be blackballed before his NHL career even begins. Miller was a talented defenseman drafted in 2020, but today he remains untouchable to NHL teams. Not because of on-ice play, but because of what surfaced about his past behavior. In October 2020, at age 18, Miller was selected in the 4th round by the Arizona Coyotes. However, it quickly emerged that as a 14-year-old, Miller had been involved in horrific bullying of a developmentally disabled black classmate. Court records showed that in 2016, Miller repeatedly harassed and abused the classmate, including using racial slurs and even tricking the boy into eating candy that had been rubbed in a urinal, for which Miller was convicted in juvenile court of assault and violating the Ohio Safe Schools Act. This was not an isolated prank, but a pattern of racist bullying that went on for years. According to the victim's family, when the facts became public, the outcry was swift and fierce. The Coyotes were embarrassed they hadn't checked Miller's background thoroughly and re-announced his draft rights just 22 years after selecting him. And at age 18, Miller's path to the NHL was gone. For 2 years, Miller played in the junior USHL, hoping time and good performance might earn him a second chance, but the stigma didn't fade. In November 2022, the Boston Bruins stunned observers by signing Miller to an entry-level contract, only to face immediate backlash from fans, media, and even their own players. Bruins veterans spoke out publicly, saying that Miller's past conduct did not align with the character and integrity expected in the locker room. Captain Patrice Bergeron emphasized that the Bruins culture is built on character, inclusion, diversity, respect, and that Miller's actions were unacceptable. We don't stand by that. The situation grew even more untenable when the NHL commissioner Gary Bettman weighed in, stating that Miller was not eligible to play in the NHL at that time. Bettman went as far to say that Miller is not coming into the NHL and he's not eligible at this point, and I can't tell you that he'll ever be eligible. Essentially, the league's top authority publicly blackballed the player for at least the foreseeable future. Under the immense pressure, Boston reversed course in a matter of days. Team president Cam Neely admitted they dropped the ball and announced the Bruins were parting ways with Miller before he had even had a game for the organization. The contract was broken and Miller was back where he started, a man without a team and his NHL dream gone. Today, Miller plays in the KHL, and it doesn't seem likely he'll ever get a chance in the NHL. While Miller was never allowed in, Mike Danton's story is one of shocking betrayal from within. He had already made it, playing in the NHL, carving out a role as a gritty forward, when his life spiraled into one of the most bizarre and disturbing scandals in league history. A murder for hire plot, a federal conviction, and a prison sentence would not only end his career, but leave a stain on his entire life. Mike Danton's saga is one of the most bizarre and tragic in NHL history. A young player who literally plotted to commit murder, destroying his career and landing him in prison. Danton was a gritty forward who had fought hard to carve out a spot with the St. Louis Blues in the early 2000s. But behind the scenes, he was involved in a toxic relationship with his mentor/agent David Frost. In April 2004, just as the Blues were eliminated from the playoffs, Mike Danton shocked the sports world by being arrested in a murder-for-hire conspiracy. He tried to hire a hitman to kill someone in his inner circle. Prosecutors asserted that his first target was David Frost, his own agent and former junior coach. According to investigators, Danton panicked that Frost was about to sever ties and decided to have him eliminated, enlisting a young woman to help him find a hitman. The plot was undercovered and foiled by the FBI, leading to his immediate arrest and a media frenzy. In July 2004, he pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. In a courtroom, he admitted to the essentials of the plot, and in November 2004, he was sentenced to 7.5 years in federal prison. The judge noted that Danton might not be allowed to go back into the United States after serving his time, since he was a Polish-Canadian player. With that, his NHL career was over. He was a convicted felon, hauled off to prison with no future in hockey. The NHL has no formal rule that a criminal conviction bans a player, but no team in their right mind would employ someone guilty of plotting a murder. Years later, Danton tried to explain his mindset. In a 2009 interview, he dropped a bombshell claim. He insisted the target wasn't Frost at all, but his own estranged father, Steve Jefferson. Danton claimed he was paranoid and believed his father was coming after him to end his life, and he arranged a preemptive strike out of fear. He had previously accused his father of abuse and cut ties with him earlier, moving in with his coach and agent Frost as a teen. However, this claim didn't change the outcome. Danton remained in prison. After serving 5 years behind bars, as he was released on parole in 2009, he tried to turn his life around. He went to college, earned a degree, and even played in some semi-pro hockey leagues in Europe. However, his NHL dreams were over. Danton's fall from the NHL was rooted in a criminal conspiracy off the ice, an extraordinary case that ended with prison bars and a lifetime of regret. Marty McSorley's exile, on the other hand, played out in front of millions, in the final seconds of a game, with one reckless swing of a stick that would define his legacy forever. Marty McSorley was a legendary forcer of the 1980s and 90s, famous as Wayne Gretzky's tough guy protector, but one moment of madness in 2000 destroyed his legacy and got him blackballed from the NHL. The incident occurred on February 21st, 2000, in the final seconds of a game between McSorley's Boston Bruins and the Vancouver Canucks. McSorley, a 17-year NHL veteran, nearing the end of his career, was desperate to drive Vancouver enforcer Donald Brashear into a fight before time expired. When Brashear refused to engage, an irritated McSorley swung his stick like an axe from behind and struck Brashear in the head with a vicious two-handed slash. Brashear's helmet flew off and he fell to the ice, knocked unconscious. His head hit the ice hard, causing a seizure and a grade 3 concussion. The sight of Brashear lying motionless sent shockwaves through the NHL world. It was one of the most dangerous acts of violence ever caught on film. The NHL acted swiftly, handing McSorley a suspension the very next day. Ultimately, the league banned him from the remainder of the 1999 to 2000 season, a total of 23 games, which was at the time the longest suspension for on-ice violence in modern NHL history. But that wasn't over yet. Canadian authorities pressed charges for assault with a weapon, making him the first NHL player to face trial for an on-ice play in over a decade. In October 2000, a Vancouver judge found McSorley guilty of assault for the stick attack. The judge rejected McSorley's claim that he merely meant to hit Brashear's shoulder, comparing it to a child swinging a bat. An NHL player would never ever miss that. Brashear was struck as intended, the judge said in his ruling. McSorley received an 18-month conditional discharge, essentially probation, with the condition that he would not engage in any professional hockey games where Brashear was present. Though he avoided jail time, the conviction cemented the severity of his act. In the wake of his court verdict, NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman announced that McSorley's suspension was extended to a full year, through February 21st, 2000. This meant he could not apply for reinstatement until he had missed an entire calendar year of play. By the time the date arrived, McSorley was 37 and his contract had expired. No other NHL team was interested in signing a player with convicted assault on his name. Thus, Marty McSorley never played another NHL game after that incident. He attempted to continue his career in lower leagues and even in the UK, but the International Ice Hockey Federation honored the NHL suspension and blocked those efforts. He soon retired and transitioned into coaching and TV work, but his playing days were done. The NHL made an example of him, signaling that certain certain lines cannot be crossed without permanent consequences. McSorley's career ended with one violent act, a moment of rage that crossed the line and shocked the hockey world. Raffi Torres, by contrast, wasn't undone by a single hit, but by a pattern. Time and time again, he delivered dangerous blows until the league finally had enough. Raffi Torres was once a promising first-rounder who evolved into a physical grinder and ultimately one of the most suspended players in NHL history. Torres' playing style always pushed the envelope. He delivered tremendous hits, often to energize his team, but too often his hits veered into dangerous territory. Over a 14-year career, Torres was suspended 5 times for illegal hits to the head. Each incident escalated his reputation as a reckless, repeat offender. By 2015, the league had enough of him, and Torres received a historic 41-game suspension that effectively ended his NHL career. Torres' descent into infamy began with earlier bans that were severe in their own right. In the 2012 playoffs, whilst he was playing for the Phoenix Coyotes, Torres delivered a jumping blindsided hit on Chicago's Marian Hossa that knocked Hossa out cold on the ice. The NHL threw the book at him with a 25-game suspension, which was later reduced to 21 after an appeal. At the time, that was the 4th longest ban ever handed out by the NHL, but that punishment did not perform towards his game. A year later, in 2013, as a member of the San Jose Sharks, he leveled Jarrett Stoll of the LA Kings with another high hit in the playoffs, earning a shorter suspension. By this point, Torres had been in the front office of the NHL's Department of Player Safety so often that he had no benefit of doubt. Indeed, the league noted that he had 9 prior disciplinary incidents, including 4 official suspensions, for hits strikingly similar in nature, targeting opponents' heads and often coming late or blindsided. The final straw came in a preseason game on October 3rd, 2015. In an essentially meaningless exhibition, Torres delivered yet another brutal headshot, this time on Jacob Silfverberg of the Anaheim Ducks. Jacob had dumped the puck and was no longer in play when Torres came across and hit him high, drawing blood. The NHL suspended him for 41 games without pay, covering half the 2015 to 2016 season. It was one of the longest suspensions in league history for an all-night infraction, the longest for a hit to another player in fact. The league's message was blunt: enough is enough. Even Torres himself did not appeal the decision. He publicly apologized and said, "I accept the 41-game suspension." By the time he served that suspension, he was 34 years old and a free agent. No team wanted him or wanted to be associated with him, as he was the NHL's most notorious head hitter. In November 2016, having not suited up in the league again, he quietly announced his retirement, ending his professional hockey career. Torres hit his way out of the league, each suspension a warning ignored, each hit another step toward exile. Brant Myers took a different path. His battle wasn't with opponents, but with addiction. His blackballing didn't come from violence or scandal, but from heartbreaking cycles of relapse, failed tests, and one final line the NHL could no longer overlook. Brant Myers had a long history of struggle with substance abuse and ultimately led the NHL to impose a lifetime ban. Myers was an enforcer who played for 6 different NHL teams in the 90s and early 2000s. He never was a star, and his role was to fight and bring out toughness, but he had enough talent to keep getting contracts. However, he also had a serious drug problem and an alcohol problem that he couldn't shake away, even as the league tried to help him. He became the second player ever to voluntarily enter the NHL substance and abuse program in 1997 and had multiple stints in rehab over the years. Unfortunately, each time he relapsed. The NHL itself has a structured escalation for substance abuse. Stage 1 is kept confidential, but by stage 4, a player faces a ban. Brant Myers blew past all the warnings. He failed drug tests 4 times, each resulting into a suspension, and went through all stages of the program without lasting success. Finally, around 2006, the NHL had no choice but to kick him out for good. After his 4th positive drug test, he was informed he was banned from the league for life. This is an extremely rare action. Myers is the only player in league history to receive a lifetime ban for substance abuse. Essentially, the league reached to a point where it could no longer accommodate his relapses and no team was allowed to sign him ever again. His career thus ended, with a sad realization that addiction had cost him a place in the sport he once loved. At 32, his NHL days were over, his reputation tarnished by dirty tests, as he called them. However, he spent the next few years battling to get sober and rebuilding his life. He did eventually conquer his addictions. By the mid-2010s, he had been sober for over 7 years. In 2015, demonstrating a remarkable turnaround, the same league that had once banned him welcomed him back in a new way. The LA Kings hired Myers as a player's assistant director, tasking him with helping current players avoid the mistakes he once made. He became a mentor and counselor on issues of drugs, alcohol, and life off the ice. He guided players, but he would never suit up ever again, and his story stands as a cautionary tale. He lost his NHL career to addiction. However, he found his way in life and back in the league in another way. The NHL doesn't hand out second chances forever. Each of these players, whether through violence, racism, criminal acts, or reckless behavior, pushed beyond what the league and its teams could tolerate. Talent wasn't enough to save them, and once trust is gone, the door quietly closes. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you all in the next one.